Why did they come for her? Why a freshman, a girl with no military ties, no record, no reason to matter? Even Sarah Chen couldn't have answered that morning when the sky broke open over Northwestern University. It began like every other Tuesday in late October, gray clouds drifting above the campus, coffee steam rising from paper cups, students half awake, half alive. The air smelled of rain and roasted espresso, the kind that made you believe the world was ordinary. Sarah had believed that too. She was 18, barely 2 months into college life, a first-year student trying to survive calculus, homesickness, and the quiet ache of not belonging. Her parents called every night, her mother asking about classes, her father reminding her to back up her files. They were loving if a little strict, ordinary, or so she thought. That morning she walked across the quad, earbuds in, hoodie up, music soft enough to blur the world into a rhythm. She smiled at a passing jogger, sidestepped a skateboarder, and thought about the cute sophomore from her dorm who still hadn't texted back. That was her life, uncomplicated, safe, predictable. Until her phone buzzed. Once, twice, 3 times insistent, unnatural. She ignored it. The professor hated distractions. But then came the text, the kind that freezes blood before the mind can think. Dad, Sarah, call me now. Do not go back to your dorm. Go to the library. Wait for my call. This is not a joke. Her father never texted in caps, never used words like not a joke. A tremor of confusion crawled up her spine. She slipped her phone beneath the desk, heart thudding. Professor Martinez was explaining diplomatic immunity, but the words no longer reached her. Sarah stared at the text until the letters blurred. Family emergency, accident. Her parents were only an hour away, Chicago's suburbs, but the message carried the cold precision of something far worse. She gathered her notebook, whispered an excuse, and slipped from the lecture hall. The corridor smelled of old paint and rain leaking through open windows. Outside, the wind picked up, shaking golden leaves across the brick walks. The phone buzzed again. Unknown number this time. She didn't answer. Then the sound began, a low, rhythmic thump, so distant she thought it was construction near the lake. But it grew, louder, deeper. The ground vibrated. Students stopped mid-stride, faces tilting upward. Helicopters. Not the news kind, not medical. Black, sleek, predatory shapes slicing through the clouds. 1, 2, then 4 rotors hovered above the quad, kicking up whirlwinds of leaves. Phones came out. Students laughed, assuming movie shoot or military demo. But Sarah felt something else, a pull in her gut, the ancient instinct that whispers, run. She couldn't. Her phone rang again, no ID. She hesitated, then answered. Sarah Chen. Who is this? Colonel Rebecca Torres, United States Army Special Operations Command. You need to listen very carefully. You're in immediate danger. For a heartbeat, she almost laughed. Immediate danger. She was in hoodie and jeans, late for class. But the voice was too calm, too controlled. We're here to extract you. Extract me from what? Hostile agents are on campus. They're looking for you. The words landed with surgical precision, cutting through every rational thought. Her voice trembled. There must be a mistake. I'm just a student. Not anymore, Miss Chen. Your parents' past has caught up with you. She stopped walking. Around her, students shouted, pointing their phones at the descending aircraft. Soldiers, real soldiers, rappelled down ropes, black gear gleaming. Sarah whispered into her phone, my parents, what about them? They're safe, but you need to move, right now. Blue jacket, black backpack, I can see you near the fountain. Walk toward the library, don't run, do you understand? Her stomach dropped. Whoever this colonel was, she was watching Sarah live. Sarah started walking, her hands shook. How do you even know who I am? Because, Miss Chen, your family has been under quiet protection for 6 years. We never expected this day to come so soon. The world tilted, 6 years protection. Her parents, the people who argued over grocery lists, under protection. Around her chaos spread. Campus security radios crackled, students ran. The rotor wash roared like a storm. Sarah reached the library steps and froze. The colonel's voice returned. Don't go through the main entrance. There's a service door on the east side. We evacuated the building 20 minutes ago. Go there. Sarah turned east and stopped again. A man in a gray hoodie sat on a bench, pretending to read. He was too still. Too interested in nothing. He's watching the door, Sarah whispered. We see him, Torres replied. In 30 seconds there'll be a distraction. When he moves, you run. 15 seconds max, understand? What kind of distraction? The kind that makes people think there's been an accident. Remember, they can't afford to hurt you. You're no good to them dead. Sarah pressed herself behind an oak tree. Her heart pounded. She tried to breathe. Colonel, how long have you known about my parents? The pause stretched too long. Since you were 12. The words hit like a physical blow. 12 years old, when she was winning spelling bees and building Lego rockets. They'd been watching her that long. We've monitored potential threats. Your father's work made you a target. A loud crash erupted from the quad, metal and shouting. Gray hoodie stood, eyes widening, and moved toward the commotion. Go now, Sarah. She ran. 15 seconds felt like a lifetime. Every footstep sounded too loud. She grabbed the service door handle and nearly sobbed with relief when it opened. 2 figures in black gear stood inside, weapons slung, faces hidden behind masks. Miss Chen, one said in an American accent. Lieutenant Morrison, U.S. Army, you're safe now, follow me. Safe, the word had already lost its meaning. They guided her through corridors beneath the library she'd never known existed. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. She passed rooms filled with equipment that looked military, not academic. How long has this basement been here? Longer than the campus itself, Morrison said. Most universities cooperate with us when national security's at stake. They descended 2 more levels until the walls turned to reinforced concrete. At the end of the hall, a steel door waited. What's down there? The truth. When it opened, Sarah stepped into a command center straight from a spy movie. Monitors lined the walls, showing satellite feeds and thermal maps of campus. Uniformed personnel moved with machine-like efficiency. A woman stood at the center, gray hair pulled tight, eyes like steel. Sarah, she said, extending a hand. Colonel Rebecca Torres, I'm sorry we had to meet like this. Sarah didn't take the hand. What is happening? Who are you people? Why are there soldiers on my campus? Torres gestured toward a screen displaying 2 photos. Her parents, younger, in military uniforms Sarah had never seen. Your father, Captain David Chen. Your mother, Lieutenant Alice Wu. 25 years ago they worked for a joint U.S. Taiwan project called Nightingale. Sarah stared. That's not possible. My dad's an engineer. He writes code for traffic systems. He used to write code for quantum encryption systems, Torres said quietly. Your parents built something called quantum lock, an unbreakable communication shield. Every classified message between the U.S. and its Pacific allies passes through it. Sarah shook her head slowly. That's crazy. Not crazy, critical. And someone learned that the key to quantum lock is encoded into you. The room fell silent except for the hum of machines. Sarah laughed once, sharp, disbelieving. You're saying I'm some kind of password? A biometric key, Morrison said. Your parents used genetic sequences from their own child to lock the system. Without your DNA, it can't be cracked. Sarah took a step back. That's insane. Insane or not, foreign agents know it, Torres said. They're on campus to capture you alive. Alive? That word echoed. It wasn't comforting, it was terrifying. Sarah looked from one face to another. No one looked uncertain. No one looked like they were lying. "What do I do now?" Her voice was small. "You cooperate and we keep you alive." A monitor beeped loudly. Morrison glanced at it, then at Torres. "Colonel, we've got movement. 6 heat signatures approaching Sector 7. Non-U.S. weapons detected." "They're here," Torres murmured. "Seal the perimeter." Klaxons flashed red. Voices crackled over headsets. The entire room shifted from explanation to battle readiness in seconds. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, watching as men and women in uniform snapped into motion. It was like watching a machine come to life, cold, efficient, terrifying. "We're moving you now," Torres said. "Secondary bunker, go." "But my parents—" "They're under protection. But Sarah, this won't end today. You need to understand that." The alarm grew louder. Somewhere above, a distant explosion rumbled. Morrison grabbed her arm. "Stay close." They ran down a corridor lit by flashing red lights. The walls seemed to breathe with the pulse of sirens. Sarah's mind spun through the impossible math of it all: parents who weren't who they said they were, a military operation beneath her campus, and now people trying to capture her for secrets she didn't understand. They entered a smaller room, reinforced walls, dim lights, one table. Torres followed them in, closing the door. "Listen carefully. You have 2 options. We can relocate you under a new identity, you disappear forever, or you can help us extract the key from your genetic code. It's experimental and dangerous." Sarah stared at her hands. They were shaking uncontrollably. "I was supposed to take a midterm today." Tor's voice softened, almost human. "That life is over, Sarah." The room vibrated again, closer this time. Gunfire echoed through the concrete. Sarah closed her eyes. She could still smell coffee from the quad, hear the students laughing, see the leaves swirling in the wind before the helicopters came. It was a different world, one she'd never get back. In that moment, she wasn't a soldier or a spy or a national asset. She was a daughter, terrified and broken, standing in a room full of strangers who claimed to own her future. "Why me?" she whispered. No one answered. Outside the door, boots pounded against steel, enemy or ally, she couldn't tell. The world had stopped making sense hours ago. Inside her chest, something shifted, a spark between fear and anger. The moment a child realizes no one is coming to save her. For the first time, Sarah Chen understood that whatever happened next would define her forever. And she wasn't sure whose side she was on anymore. How do you decide who to trust when everyone in the room is trained to lie? Sarah stood frozen in the dim bunker, the air thick with metal and panic. Above her, the muffled thunder of gunfire rattled the ceiling. Someone shouted coordinates. Someone else cursed. The command center, that strange hybrid of university basement and military nerve center, had turned into a war zone. Colonel Torres slammed her hand against a console. "We've got multiple hostiles breaching the west entrance. Morrison, get her ready for immediate relocation." Sarah's heart was racing so hard she thought it might drown out the alarms. "Wait, what's happening up there?" "Nothing you can fix," Torres snapped, then softened, catching the fear in Sarah's eyes. "Listen to me. This is what we trained for. You just got caught in the crossfire of something bigger than any of us." "Bigger than college students being shot at," Sarah shot back, her voice shaking. "You think that helps?" Torres didn't flinch. "You're not a student anymore. You're a national security priority." Sarah laughed bitterly. "I didn't ask to be one." "No one ever does." The colonel turned to her comms officer. "Evac routes. South tunnels are still clear. North access is compromised. We've got maybe 6 minutes before total containment." "Then we move now." Morrison gestured toward the door. "Miss Chen, stay close. Eyes down, follow my lead." Sarah wanted to scream, to run, To wake up and find this was all a nightmare, that she was still in class, bored and safe. But reality had already collapsed. The moment those choppers appeared, the version of her life that made sense had died. They exited the bunker into a narrow corridor. The emergency lights bathed everything in pooling red. Morrison's footsteps echoed. Sarah followed, clutching her backpack like it was armor. "Why me?" she whispered again. "Why not just take whatever this thing is out of me? Why keep me alive?" "Because we can't replicate what's in your DNA," Morrison said without turning. "You're the only version of it that exists. So I'm, what, government property now?" "Not property," Morrison said quietly, "but definitely not ordinary anymore." They turned a corner and entered a loading bay filled with armored personnel carriers. Soldiers in Delta Force uniforms moved with precision, weapons drawn. Sarah could feel their eyes on her, not unkind, but assessing, measuring, the way one might look at a package that could detonate if handled wrong. Tors caught up to them, barking orders. "We're splitting into 2 teams. Alpha takes the convoy, Bravo secures the tunnels. Chen stays with me." Sarah's voice cracked. "You can't just—" "Sarah," Tors interrupted. "You can be scared later. Right now, I need you alive." The colonel's tone left no room for argument. They moved toward an elevator hidden behind reinforced doors. A biometric scanner blinked green as Tors pressed her palm against it. The doors opened, revealing a narrow lift descending deep below the university. "Where are we going?" Sarah asked. "To the sublevel command center. It's safer there." "That's what you said about the last one." Tors didn't respond. The elevator jerked, then began its descent. The motion was smooth but claustrophobic. The lights flickered. Sarah pressed her back to the wall, trying to steady her breathing. "You said my parents were in protective custody," she said finally. "Where are they?" Tors looked at her. "They're safe. I can't tell you more than that." "That's not good enough." "I know," the colonel's voice softened. "But right now, knowing too much could get them and you killed." The elevator doors opened with a hiss. The new chamber was smaller, less personnel, more silence. Banks of computers displayed satellite feeds, security grids, and something that looked like a genome sequence spiraling endlessly across a screen. Tors gestured toward the display. "That's you, Sarah." Sarah stepped closer. Her DNA, billions of base pairs rendered in neon light, spun slowly in 3D space. "What am I looking at?" "The encryption pattern your parents built," Tors said. "Quantum lock, the unbreakable communication system. Every classified transmission in the Pacific Theater runs through this code." Sarah frowned. "Then why does my DNA matter?" "Because your genetic sequence isn't random," Morrison said, joining them. "They embedded the final encryption key into it, micro-encoded data mapped onto your genome. Without you, the system stays secure. But if hostile forces get access to your cells, they can break it. Or worse," Tors added, "they can use it." Sarah turned toward her. "Use it how?" Tors hesitated. "Let's just say quantum lock isn't only for defense. Under the wrong hands, it becomes a weapon." The weight of those words sank deep. Sarah stared at her own DNA on the monitor, twisting, beautiful, terrible. A part of her wanted to scream. Another part wanted to reach into the screen and tear it apart. "So I'm not even me anymore," she said quietly. "I'm a system." Tors met her gaze. "You're a person, but right now you're also the key to preventing a war." The room's comms crackled. "Colonel, perimeter breach confirmed. 6 hostiles inside campus perimeter. Chinese MSS confirmed. Possible secondary team, wait, new thermal contacts. Unknown origin." Tors stiffened. "How many?" 7, no, 8. And they're not moving like MSS, could be Russian SVR. Sarah's stomach dropped. "So I've got 2 countries trying to kidnap me now." Tors didn't answer. She turned to her team. "Seal all exits except Tunnel Bravo. Prep the emergency extraction. Morrison handed Sarah a headset. Put this on. It'll keep you in contact with command even if we lose main signal. Sarah slipped the device into her ear. It felt alien, but the moment it powered up, she heard a faint heartbeat tone, her own vitals transmitted to the command feed. Tors leaned close. Listen carefully. You're going underground again, deep into the tunnel system. We'll guide you to a secure point for extraction. Sarah's throat tightened. You're sending me alone. You'll have surveillance. You'll have us in your ear. But yes, it's the only way to move you unseen. I'm not a soldier. No, Tors said softly. But you're resourceful. Your parents made sure of that. Sarah's voice cracked. You keep saying that like it's a compliment. It is. You're alive because of it. The colonel pressed something into Sarah's hand, a small metallic fob. Emergency beacon. Press once and every U.S. unit within 50 meters will converge on you. Don't press it unless you have no other choice. Sarah nodded, though her hands trembled so badly she almost dropped it. Morrison opened the reinforced door at the far end of the chamber, revealing a dimly lit tunnel stretching into darkness. Stay low, move fast, and Sarah. She turned. No matter what happens, remember you're not alone. We're with you. The door closed behind her, sealing her into the underground labyrinth. The air was cooler here, dry, heavy with dust and age. She could smell concrete, oil, faint traces of rust. The hum of distant machinery echoed like ghosts of another time. Command, this is Asset 1, she whispered. I'm in the tunnels. Tor's voice came through the headset. Copy, Asset 1. We've got you on GPS. Follow the red markers on your left. They'll lead to the subtunnel junction. Sarah adjusted her backpack strap and started walking. Each footstep echoed. Her own breath felt too loud. The tunnels weren't what she expected. They were wide, almost like hallways lined with pipes, conduits, and faded hazard signs. Some sections looked new, others looked ancient, sealed with rusted grates and crumbling stone. She passed a faded stencil on the wall. U.S. Civil Defense, 1962. Colonel, she whispered, what are these tunnels? Tor's voice crackled back. They were built during the Cold War. Northwestern was part of the continuity of government network, safe zones in case of nuclear strike. Sarah shivered. So I'm walking through a fallout shelter. Something like that. But parts of the network were modernized after 9/11. You're walking through decades of secrets. Her scanner, a tablet-sized device Morrison had given her, flickered. Lines pulsed across the screen, mapping her position. Then static. Command, I'm losing signal. Copy that. You're entering an interference zone. We'll patch you through secondary relay. The static cleared just enough for a faint signal to return, but a new sound bled through the channel. Not voices, footsteps, distant, metallic, measured. Sarah froze. Colonel, I think there's someone else down here. Tor's tone changed, sharp, controlled. Asset 1, stay still. Activate your scanner's detection mode. Sarah pressed a button on the side of the device. The screen lit with new data, heat signatures, faint and scattered, 3 of them, moving. They're closing in, she whispered. Chinese MSS team, Tor said grimly. They must have found the secondary entrance. We're rerouting a Delta unit to intercept, but you need to move now. Left tunnel, 200 meters. Sarah began running, or trying to. Her legs felt like they were made of glass. Every sound echoed off the concrete walls. Behind her, the footsteps quickened. Voices, low, foreign, echoed faintly through the tunnel. Command, they're behind me. Keep moving, Asset 1. Next junction in 40 meters. She reached a fork. The scanner glitched again. Which way? Right, go right. She turned sharply, nearly slipping on the damp floor. Her chest burned. The footsteps grew louder. Then from behind, a metallic clang. She risked a glance back. A flashlight beam cut through the darkness. silhouettes armed fast closing in. "Command there!" Her sentence cut off as a bullet struck the wall beside her, sending concrete dust into the air. "Run!" Tor's voice roared. Sarah sprinted, her lungs screamed. The tunnel bent upward toward a faint light ahead, another door. She threw herself against it. Locked. No, no, no. She slammed the handle again. Nothing. Her fingers found the panic fob clipped to her belt. One press, and she'd bring Delta Force right to her. But if they were already fighting above, it might expose her position before they reached her. "Command," she gasped. "Doors locked, hostiles, 20 meters. What do I do?" Tor's reply came instantly. "Step back 3 paces. There's a keypad on the right wall. Enter 649 Bravo." She found the keypad, nearly blinded by tears and dust, punched in the code. The lock released with a hiss. Sarah shoved the door open, stumbled inside, and slammed it shut behind her. For several seconds she could only hear her breathing, ragged, uneven. Then her headset crackled again. "You're clear for now. You've entered the secondary maintenance sector. Sit tight while we reposition the Delta team." Sarah pressed her back against the cold concrete. The adrenaline slowly bled into exhaustion. She closed her eyes. In the darkness, fragments of her old life flickered, the sound of her mother humming while cooking, the way her father smiled when she aced her exams. She thought of how they'd lied to her every day of her life and how, somehow, it was out of love. She whispered to herself, "What did you two create?" No answer came, only the soft hum of the tunnel and the distant echoes of a world unraveling above her. But somewhere deep inside that fear, something else stirred, a realization. If she was built to be a key, maybe she could decide which doors to open and which to close forever. What happens to a person the moment fear becomes instinct, when running stops being panic and turns into purpose? Sarah Chin didn't know, not yet. But she was about to find out. She sat on the cold concrete floor, breath shallow, palms raw from clutching the panic fob. The tunnel light above her flickered every few seconds, throwing long shadows across the maintenance room. Her clothes were smeared with dust and streaks of blood she didn't remember getting. The world had narrowed to one truth: she was being hunted. And not just by men with guns, but by the ghosts of decisions her parents made decades ago. Her headset crackled back to life. "Asset 1, this is command. Report status." "Still breathing," she whispered. "Door sealed. Hostiles outside, maybe 20 meters. I can hear them." "Copy that. Delta Team 2 is inbound. ETA 4 minutes." "I don't have 4 minutes." "Then you'll make it feel like less." Colonel Tor's voice was sharp, but there was something in it, something that didn't belong in a battlefield command. Concern, maybe guilt. Sarah looked down at the scanner Morrison had given her. It was flickering again, static crawling across the screen. She smacked the side. The device cleared for a second, revealing 3 heat signatures outside the sealed door. They were waiting, maybe listening. "Colonel," she whispered, "they're not moving, just standing there. They're waiting for something, probably coordinating with a support team above ground." "Can they breach the door?" "Eventually, but it'll take them a few minutes. That's our window." Sarah exhaled shakily. "You keep saying our, but you're not down here." "No," Torres replied, quiet now. "But I've been where you are. Trust me when I say this, fear doesn't mean weakness. It means your brain's paying attention." Sarah smiled bitterly. "You sound like my mother." There was a pause on the other end. "That's not a coincidence." Sarah's brow furrowed. "What do you mean?" "Your parents and I served together, a lifetime ago, before any of this. They were brilliant, reckless, but brilliant. They believed technology could keep people safe. But safety has a price, Sarah, and someone always has to pay it." The words landed like stones. Sarah stared at the scanner, at those 3 silent, waiting shapes. "And I'm the one paying it now." "Maybe," Torres said, But how you pay it, that's up to you. The comms went silent again, replaced by the faint hum of the ventilation system. Sarah leaned her head back against the wall. Her thoughts were a blur of fragments. Her father teaching her chess, her mother insisting on running safety drills before family road trips, the endless talk about protocols and habits she thought were overprotective nonsense. It hit her all at once. They'd been training her. All those years, every small routine, the exit plans, the memorization games, even the what-if scenarios her parents turned into family jokes. They weren't paranoid, they were preparing her. Okay, she whispered to herself, rising slowly. Let's see if all that training actually meant something. She scanned the room, one door, one vent, two maintenance hatches, a single flickering bulb above. Her mind began mapping possibilities. If the enemy breached the main door, she'd have maybe 10 seconds before they fired. The vent was too narrow to crawl through, but the maintenance shaft might lead to a parallel tunnel. She crouched beside it, trying to unscrew the bolts with trembling fingers. They wouldn't budge. Command, what kind of tools am I supposed to have down here? Look behind the panel on your right. There should be an emergency kit. She found it, a small metal box half buried in dust. Inside, a flashlight, a multi-tool, and a miniature device with a blinking red light. She frowned. What's this? EMP emitter, Torres replied. Last resort defense. Wipes electronics within 50 meters. Including my scanner. Temporarily. Including the headset. Yes. So basically, it turns me deaf, blind, and invisible. Exactly, which in the right hands can be useful. The thud of a boot against metal made Sarah freeze. The hostiles outside were testing the door. Her heartbeat surged. She pressed the headset tighter. They're starting to breach. Copy that. 2 minutes till Delta arrives. 2 minutes felt like a lifetime. She pocketed the multi-tool, gripped the EMP, and whispered to herself, don't panic. Observe, predict, move. Her father's voice echoed from a memory. The first step to surviving chaos is to slow it down in your head. The next kick dented the steel door inward. She stumbled back, adrenaline burning through her fear. Colonel, they're in. Sarah, activate the EMP now. She pressed the switch. A blinding pulse of blue-white light erupted through the room. Every screen went dark, every hum fell silent. For 3 seconds there was nothing, just the sound of her own heartbeat. Then came shouting in Mandarin, confused, panicked. The breach had failed. The EMP had fried their detonators and comms. Sarah didn't wait. She pried open the maintenance hatch with the multi-tool and crawled in, tearing her sweatshirt sleeve as she squeezed through. The shaft was narrow and black, the air thick with dust. She could hear the men outside forcing the door, angry now. She kept crawling, knees scraping metal, until the passage widened into a vertical shaft. A ladder led upward into darkness. She started climbing. Her muscles screamed, but she didn't stop. After 20 feet, a faint light appeared above, a maintenance grate. She pushed it open and emerged into a broader section of tunnel lined with old piping. Her headset crackled weakly back to life. Asset 1, report. Still alive, she panted. EMP worked. They're disoriented. Good work. You've got less than 60 seconds before they recover. Keep moving east toward the junction. She started walking, then running. Her scanner flickered back online, showing a tangle of corridors ahead. But now new heat signatures appeared, not 3, 6. Command, I've got more movement down here. Copy, that's the second hostile team. Russian SVR. They're not working with the Chinese. You've got to be kidding me. Welcome to geopolitics. Sarah laughed, a sharp, almost hysterical sound. So I'm basically an international prize now. That's one way to put it, Morrison's voice joined in. Delta is 200 meters from your position. We'll intercept at the junction. She slowed as the tunnel opened into a wider chamber filled with abandoned machinery. Rusted pipes, broken crates, and flickering lights. Her footsteps echoed eerily. Command, there's something wrong with this place. Define wrong. It's too quiet. Her scanner beeped, sudden, rapid. Multiple red dots appeared all at once. Her breath caught. Colonel, they're surrounding me. Stay calm, find cover, we're almost there. Sarah ducked behind an old generator. The sound of boots filled the tunnel. Shadows moved in from every side, rifles raised, laser sights dancing across the walls. Command, she whispered, they've got me cornered. Asset 1, do not engage. Delta's 30 seconds out. But 30 seconds was a long time when men with guns were closing in. One of the soldiers shouted something, Russian, and began moving closer, weapon steady. Sarah's fingers brushed the panic fob on her belt. Not yet. One more second. She could almost hear her father's voice again. Think, Sarah. Always think before you react. She spotted something, a small gas valve along the wall, hissing faintly. Maybe it still worked. She crouched lower, crawled along the floor, and twisted it open as quietly as she could. The faint smell of methane filled the air. Command, I have a potential distraction. Be careful, those lines could ignite. That's the idea. She tore a strip from her torn sweatshirt, wrapped it around a piece of scrap metal, and pulled a lighter from her pocket. She didn't smoke, but her roommate did, and she'd borrowed it weeks ago for candles. Now it felt like fate. She whispered, sorry, Claire, and flicked the lighter. The makeshift torch flared to life. Sarah rolled it across the floor toward the oncoming soldiers. The gas caught instantly, a burst of light, a shockwave, and a roar that threw her backward against the wall. Heat seared her arm. The tunnel erupted in chaos, shouting, confusion, smoke. Command, explosion in the junction. We see it, Delta team, move. Through the haze, Sarah saw silhouettes, not the enemy this time, but American soldiers moving fast, precise. Delta Force. Asset 1, Morrison's voice came through the smoke. We've got you. Hands grabbed her, pulling her upright. Her ears rang. The world spun. She coughed, gasping for air as Morrison guided her toward a side passage. Nice trick back there, he said. She half smiled. Thanks, I'm considering chemistry as a major. Tor's voice cut through the comms. We've secured the west tunnels. Good work, everyone. Morrison, get her to the safe zone. We're initiating Phase 2. Phase 2? Sarah asked, limping beside him. The part where we stop running, Morrison said grimly. They moved through the smoke and into a section of tunnel that looked newer, reinforced walls, heavy wiring, and the faint hum of machines ahead. After everything she just survived, Sarah felt like she was walking through a dream. Colonel, she said into her headset, how long have you been planning this? 6 years, Torres replied. Ever since your father resurfaced on our watch list, we always knew there was a chance the information about you would leak. 6 years, Sarah repeated softly. So all those security checks, the scholarships, the emails, they weren't coincidences, were they? No. Her voice cracked. You've been controlling my life. Protecting it, Torres corrected. Feels the same from where I'm standing. Morrison glanced at her but said nothing. There was truth in both sides. Protection and control often shared the same face. They reached a reinforced door marked Level C, Secure Operations. Morrison keyed in a code, and the door opened into a small command hub, screens, maps, a mobile lab. Sarah recognized Colonel Torres immediately, standing beside a group of technicians. The colonel looked up as Sarah entered, face streaked with sweat, eyes unreadable. You did well out there. Sarah's voice was hoarse. You said I wasn't trained. Torres gave the faintest smile. Looks like your parents took care of that part. Sarah looked at the array of equipment around her, DNA scanners, encrypted drives, surgical instruments. The realization hit her. You're going to extract it, aren't you? The key in my DNA. Tors didn't deny it. We have a mobile unit here. It's experimental, but it could end this permanently. Sarah stared at her. Or kill me. The colonel didn't blink. 5% risk. Sarah let out a shaky laugh. Only 5%. I guess that's comforting. Tors stepped closer, lowering her voice. Listen, Sarah, I won't lie to you, the procedure's dangerous. But if it works, you'll never have to look over your shoulder again. You can go back to being whoever you want. And if it fails? Tor's eyes softened. Then you'll have given your life protecting millions who will never know your name. Sarah looked away. That sounds a lot like dying for a lie. Morrison interjected. Colonel, we're out of time. Satellite feeds show renewed enemy movement. Both foreign teams are regrouping. Tors turned back to Sarah. You have to decide. Disappear forever under protection or face the risk and end this for good. Sarah's hands shook as she stared at the console. Two paths, neither safe, neither fair. She looked up, her voice steady but hollow. You keep calling me an asset, Colonel, but maybe it's time I start acting like a person. Tors frowned. What does that mean? It means I'm done letting other people make choices for me. Sarah turned toward the tunnel exit. The Delta soldiers tensed, waiting for orders. Tor's voice cut through the tension. Sarah, don't do anything reckless. She glanced back, a faint, tired smile on her face. You'll have to define reckless. And with that, the freshman who used to worry about calculus tests stepped back into the chaos, toward the next impossible choice that would decide who she really was. What do you call courage when it's born from exhaustion, not bravery? Maybe that was what Sarah felt as she walked out of the safe zone, not fear, not defiance, just a strange, calm acceptance that she was done being passive. The air in the tunnel corridor smelled of burnt metal and cordite. Delta Force soldiers whispered into comms, scanning for new threats. Somewhere above ground, helicopters circled. Somewhere far beyond, her parents were alive, or at least she hoped so. Colonel Tors watched her go, silent. Morrison followed a few steps behind, weapon raised. You don't have clearance to move alone, he said. Sarah didn't slow, then keep up. They moved through the dimly lit tunnels. Emergency lights pulsed every 10 meters, casting their faces in alternating red and white. Where are you even going? Morrison asked. To find out who's really after me. We already told you, Chinese and Russian teams. Sarah stopped, turned. That's too clean, too coordinated. You really think both countries just happened to hit the same campus on the same day for the same reason? Morrison hesitated. Intel says. Intel's wrong, she cut in. Someone set this up. He frowned. You're saying it's an inside job. I'm saying it's too perfect. You said my parents made the quantum lock system unbreakable, right? So why would two foreign agencies believe they could just kidnap me and crack it? Someone told them it was possible. Someone fed them the coordinates. Morrison's jaw tightened. You don't know how intelligence leaks work. No, Sarah said, eyes sharp. But I know how people work. Someone wants me out in the open, not dead, just exposed. He studied her. The scared freshman was gone. In her place was someone cold, methodical, dangerous in a quiet way. You sound like a soldier, he muttered. Sarah gave a faint, humorless smile. Guess that's hereditary. They reached a large chamber filled with storage crates and old military equipment. The lighting flickered. In the distance, faint echoes of gunfire bounced off the walls. Tor's voice came through the comms. Asset 1 status. Still moving, Sarah replied. East sector's clear, we're checking the old substation. Be careful. Satellite feed shows movement underground. We're losing thermal resolution. Morrison looked around uneasily. This sector isn't on the current map. Sarah tilted her head. Then why does it have power? A hum filled the room, low, mechanical. They followed it to a sealed door marked Authorized Personnel Only, Project Nightingale. Morrison's hand froze midair. That's impossible. Nightingale was shut down decades ago. Sarah stepped closer. My parents' project. He nodded slowly. Yeah, the one that created the encryption tech, but this door shouldn't exist. Sarah reached for the handle. Then let's see what someone didn't want you to find. The door creaked open with a hiss. Cold air rushed out, smelling faintly of antiseptic and ozone. Inside, the chamber was alive with machines, humming consoles, glowing blue tubes, data terminals that looked too new to be abandoned. At the center, a single workstation flickered to life. The screen displayed a digital map, not of the tunnels but of her. DNA sequences scrolling endlessly, interlaced with system diagnostics. Sarah's breath caught. They're still using my genome in real time. Morrison moved to the console. This isn't U.S. military tech. It's hybrid. Look at these signatures, encryption fragments tied to Russian firmware, Chinese network protocols. Someone's merging systems. Why? To bypass quantum lock, he said grimly. If they can make your DNA key talk to both architectures, they can open every encrypted channel on the planet. Sarah whispered, then whoever's running this isn't working for any flag. A sound echoed footsteps, heavy, slow, coming from the far end of the corridor. Morrison drew his weapon. We've got company. Sarah ducked behind a console as the sound grew louder, then stopped. Out of the shadows stepped a man in a tactical vest. Gray hair, calm eyes, no insignia. Lieutenant Morrison, the man said with unsettling familiarity, still playing babysitter. Morrison's voice hardened. Colonel Graves, you're supposed to be dead. Sarah froze. The man smiled faintly. Dead is a useful rumor, keeps the paperwork clean. Tor's voice crackled in Sarah's earpiece. Sarah, get out now. She whispered back, who is he? Graves was our commanding officer, mine and your father's. He vanished 10 years ago after Nightingale's collapse. We thought he was killed in a data breach. But Graves was alive and smiling at her. You must be David's daughter. I see the resemblance. He never could follow orders either. Sarah stepped forward, defiant. You leaked the location, didn't you? You brought them here. Graves nodded once. They needed bait. You were perfect. Morrison raised his weapon. You sold us out to foreign operatives. Graves didn't flinch. No, I sold them a chance at something bigger, global parity. Quantum lock was never meant to belong to one nation. Your government wanted monopoly. I wanted balance. Sarah's voice trembled. Balance? You call this balance? You put a target on my back. Graves's tone softened. You're not a victim, Sarah. You're a legacy. Your parents created power too dangerous for one side to own. I'm here to finish what they couldn't. Morrison pulled the trigger, but Graves moved faster, knocking the barrel aside. The bullet sparked harmlessly against the wall. Before Morrison could recover, Graves struck him with brutal precision. Morrison hit the ground, unconscious. Sarah reached for the EMP device again, but Graves was already there, hand clamping around her wrist. Easy, he said quietly. You don't want to fry your own heartbeat monitor. Colonel Tors would panic. She glared. You think I'm scared of you? Graves studied her. No, you're your father's daughter. That's why I'm giving you a choice. What choice? He nodded toward the glowing workstation. Come with me. Help me unlock the next stage of quantum lock, not for the military, not for governments, but for everyone. A world where no one controls information. Sarah stared at him, disbelief and fury mixing in her chest. You're talking about destroying global defense networks. Redefining them, he corrected. Freedom through transparency. Her mind flashed through everything that had happened, the gunfire, the choppers, the death she'd escaped. You call this freedom. It's chaos. Sometimes chaos is honest. Before she could answer, the tunnel door behind them exploded inward. Smoke, Flashbangs, shouting, Delta Force stormed in. Graves didn't hesitate. He smashed a console, sending sparks across the room, and disappeared through a back corridor as soldiers poured in. Tor's voice blared through comms. "Sarah, are you hurt?" Sarah coughed, waving away the smoke. "I'm fine, but he's gone." Tor's entered seconds later, eyes burning. "Graves, I should have known." Sarah pointed to the workstation. "He's still running the system. He's merging the networks. We have to stop it." Tor's nodded grimly. "Then we end Nightingale for good." And somewhere deep inside Sarah's chest, something shifted. Not fear, not anger. Purpose. Part 5, approximately 1,600 words. How do you fight someone who believes they're saving the world? That question haunted Sarah as she sat in the temporary command post hours later, her hands trembling around a cup of black coffee she didn't drink. Graves was gone, but his plan was. The systems beneath the university were still alive, humming with stolen power, and every passing minute, data continued to transfer to unknown servers around the globe. Tor stood at the head of the table, briefing the team. Graves has automated protocols. He's transmitting partial keys through the old Nightingale network. If he finishes the sequence, quantum lock collapses. Morrison, bruised but conscious again, muttered, and every classified defense channel in the Pacific lights up like a Christmas tree. Tors nodded. "Exactly. We have one shot to stop it before global communication goes dark." Sarah stared at the projected map. "You can't stop the upload physically, can you?" "No," Tors admitted. "We can only disrupt it from inside the system." Sarah realized what that meant before anyone said it. "You need me to go in." Tors didn't sugarcoat it. "Yes." Morrison objected instantly. "Absolutely not. She's not trained for neural sync." Tors met his eyes. "She's the key. Her neural patterns match the encryption architecture. We can't interface without her." Sarah whispered, "If I do this, can you stop him?" Tors hesitated. "If you do this, we can stop everything." Sarah stood, voice trembling but certain. "Then let's finish what he started our way." Minutes later, they stood in front of a portable neural interface rig, a crown of sensors and cables connected to the main server. The hum of energy filled the chamber like distant thunder. Tors adjusted the settings. "You'll experience disorientation, maybe visions, maybe memories. The system will pull data through emotional pathways. Stay grounded. If you lose focus, it could rewrite your neural map." Sarah swallowed hard. "You mean it could kill me?" "Or worse," Tors said quietly, "erase who you are." Morrison leaned in. "You don't have to do this." Sarah smiled faintly. "I think I already started when I ran into those tunnels." They placed the neural crown on her head. The world dimmed, then burst into light, blinding, infinite. Suddenly she wasn't in the bunker anymore. She was standing in a field of data, endless strands of glowing code stretching into the horizon like stars. And in the middle of it, a figure waited. Graves. But not the man. A projection built into the system itself. His voice echoed through the digital air. "You shouldn't have come here, Sarah." She turned slowly. "You left me no choice. You're fighting inevitability. Information wants to be free." "Freedom without truth is just noise," she shot back. "And people like you hide behind that noise." Graves smiled faintly. "You sound like your mother, always mistaking control for protection." The data field around them flickered. Sarah could feel the strain, her heartbeat overlapping with the pulse of the network. The lines of code surged like waves. "You can't stop the upload," Graves warned. "You're part of it. Your DNA is the network now." "Then maybe I can rewrite it," she said. She closed her eyes and reached inward, not with her hands but her mind. Her parents' voices echoed through memory. Code isn't just numbers, it's intention made visible. Her breath slowed. The strands of light shifted, responding to her focus. Impossible, Graves muttered. Not if it's my code. The field erupted in light. Waves of data bent, folding around her like a living organism. The upload sequence slowed, then fractured. Outside, in the real world, alarms blared. Torres and Morrison watched as the system's readings spiked violently. Colonel, she's overriding the core. Keep her steady. Inside the system, Graves lunged toward her, desperate. You'll destroy it all. She met his gaze, calm, sad. Maybe that's what it needs. The data field collapsed inward, a brilliant implosion of light and silence. When Sarah opened her eyes, she was lying on the cold floor of the bunker. The neural rig smoked beside her. Torres knelt next to her, relief flooding her features. Sarah, you did it. The network's gone. Quantum lock is offline. Graves's systems are dead. Sarah exhaled shakily. Then it's over. Torres hesitated, for now. Sarah looked at the flickering monitors, black screens where once the world's secrets had lived. My parents built something to protect the world. I destroyed it. Torres put a hand on her shoulder. You didn't destroy it. You set it free from everyone who wanted to own it. Sarah's eyes welled, but she nodded. The colonel stood. We'll get you out of here. A new name, a new life. You've earned it. Sarah rose slowly, pain in every muscle. Maybe someday, but not yet. Torres frowned. What do you mean? I need to find my parents. I need to hear the truth from them. Torres started to protest, then stopped. There was no commanding this girl anymore. Sarah Chen, the freshman who once hid behind earbuds, had become something else. Not a soldier, not an asset, something harder to define. As she stepped out of the bunker and into the fatting daylight above, she saw the broken helicopters, the quiet campus scarred by what had happened. Students were being evacuated. Reporters shouted questions from barricades. None of them knew what had really happened beneath their feet. She looked up at the sky, the same one that had roared with choppers days before, and whispered, "Sometimes safety isn't peace. It's just the silence between storms." And with that, she walked into the horizon, toward the people who had started it all, and the answers waiting in their shadows. What do you do when the truth you've been chasing might hurt more than the lies that kept you safe? Sarah Chen hadn't slept in 36 hours, but she didn't feel tired, only hollow. She left the ruined campus before sunrise, wearing borrowed fatigues and carrying a single encrypted drive that held what was left of Quantum Lock's ashes. The world above ground was calm again, too calm. Reporters were calling it a security exercise gone wrong. Students were told to go home. No one mentioned the tunnels, the firefights, or the code hidden in her DNA. The government had erased the story, but Sarah still had to live inside it. A military jeep took her as far as a supply checkpoint outside Chicago. From there, she rode a civilian train, blending in among commuters who had no idea the young woman beside them had nearly rewritten global defense networks the night before. Each reflection in the train window looked like someone else, a ghost flickering between the student she had been and the survivor she'd become. Her headset was gone, her comms disabled. Torres had respected her choice to leave, though not happily. "You'll have watchers," the colonel had said. "Friendly ones, I promise." "That's what you said last time," Sarah had replied. Torres hadn't argued. Now, as city lights gave way to endless rows of sleeping suburbs, Sarah replayed her father's voice in memory. "There's always another layer, Peanut, always." She needed that other layer now, the one that explained why her parents had built a weapon disguised as protection, and why they'd let her become the key to it. She reached their old house just before dawn. The place looked exactly as she remembered. The wind chime on the porch, the dying maple tree her mother refused to cut down, the porch light that never worked. Normal, ordinary, a lie. The front door was locked, but the emergency key was still taped under the mailbox, her father's idea of a joke. No hacker would ever look in plain sight. She smiled despite herself and stepped inside. The air smelled of dust and lavender. Family photos lined the hallway, her at age 6 with missing teeth, her parents smiling like people who believed the world was simple. She ran her fingers over the frames. "Where are you?" she whispered. A noise answered, a faint click from the kitchen. She moved silently, gripping the handle of a kitchen knife she found on the counter. "Whoever you are," she said, voice low, "you picked the wrong house." The figure that stepped from the shadows made her freeze. "Sarah," her mother whispered, "put that down." For a moment the knife felt weightless. Sarah's heart collapsed into relief, anger, disbelief. "Mom." Alice Wu looked older, hair streaked with gray, eyes lined by years of secrets. But her voice carried the same gentle cadence Sarah remembered. "I told your father you'd find us." Sarah lowered the knife but didn't let it go completely. "Where, Dad?" "He's not far, but he didn't want to risk coming until we knew you were alone." Alice stepped closer, eyes shining. "You look so much like him now." Sarah's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me about any of it?" Her mother's face flickered with guilt. "We wanted to, but protection meant ignorance. The moment you knew, you became traceable. Quantum Lock monitored its own bloodline." Sarah laughed bitterly. "So I was just another piece of code you were testing." "No," Alice said sharply. "You were the only thing we ever did right." They stood in silence, years of distance collapsing between them and still not closing the gap. Finally Sarah asked, "Where Dad, Mom, please?" Alice hesitated, then opened the basement door. "Downstairs." The basement looked nothing like a basement anymore. Half of it had been converted into a small lab, servers humming softly, holographic schematics rotating above a workbench. And at the center, hunched over a terminal, was David Chen. He turned as she descended the stairs. For a moment, father and daughter just stared at each other, two people bound by genius and betrayal. "I thought you'd never come," he said quietly. "I almost didn't," Sarah replied. "Too many people have tried to kill me lately." He winced. "I know, I followed the feeds. Tors kept me updated." Her jaw tightened. "You've been talking to her." "She's the reason you're alive, Sarah." "She's also the reason I was almost erased." David sighed. "It was never supposed to go that far. Nightingale died years ago. We destroyed every backup." "Except me," Sarah said. He looked at her then, really looked. Pride, shame, love, fear, all in one broken glance. "You were never supposed to be the lock. You were supposed to be the safeguard, the one variable no one could predict." Sarah frowned. "You used me as a failsafe." "Yes, if the system was ever corrupted, it would collapse through you. You were the firewall, not the key." She stepped back, trembling. "Do you have any idea what that cost me?" "I do now," he whispered. "I didn't think they'd find you. I thought I'd buried it deep enough." She slammed her fist against the table. "You didn't bury it. You buried me." The words hung in the air, heavier than any gunfire she'd survived. Her mother flinched. Her father said nothing. Sarah's voice softened. "Do you even know what it felt like? To wake up one day and realize my entire life was a lie. My friends, my college, every decision I thought was mine. Just another layer of protection you programmed for me." David's shoulders slumped. "I'm sorry, Sarah. I can't undo what we did, but I can make it mean something." "How?" He turned to the console. "Graves didn't die, you know that now. He used a clone of our system to lure the MSS and SVR teams together. But there's still a residual echo, an unfinished key. He can rebuild if he finds it." Her pulse quickened. "So it's not over?" "Not yet. The fragment's hidden here," he tapped the hologram, "inside a dormant server farm in northern Nevada. If he retrieves it, everything you destroyed will come back twice as strong." Sarah folded her arms. "So what, we just run again?" "No," her mother's voice was steady now. "We finish it together." David nodded. Tor's has the military power. We have the code. You have the genetic signature to seal the sequence permanently. If we synchronize those three, quantum lock becomes inert, mathematically irreversible. Sarah hesitated, and if we fail? Her father met her eyes. Then information becomes a weapon no one can control. A silence followed, long, heavy, necessary. Then Sarah said softly, "Tell me what to do." For the next 2 hours they worked, rewiring data drives, configuring transmission blockers, preparing what David called the final seal. As Sarah watched her parents move with quiet precision, she realized how much of them lived in her: the focus, the stubbornness, the refusal to quit even when the cost was unbearable. When the equipment was ready, David handed her a small device, sleek, black, the size of a coin. "This holds the last fragment. Once you insert it into the Nevada core, the system will collapse permanently." Sounds simple. It never is. Before they could say more, the basement lights flickered. A dull boom echoed outside. Alice's voice tightened. "They found us." David cursed under his breath. Graves must have traced the neural echo from the collapse. He knows we're together. Sarah's instincts flared, the same quiet awareness that had saved her in the tunnels. "Is there a back exit?" Her mother pointed to a hatch beneath the workbench. "Old escape route connects to the storm drain. Go now." David grabbed a duffel bag of drives. "We'll meet Tor's at the fallback point in 6 hours." But before Sarah could climb down, a gunshot shattered the basement window. The air filled with glass and smoke. Voices shouted from outside, foreign accents. Alice pulled Sarah down. David grabbed an old sidearm and returned fire. "Go," he shouted. Sarah's chest burned. "Not without you." "Sarah," her mother's tone was fierce, unyielding. "This is what we raised you for, to survive." More gunfire, the smell of burning circuitry. Then David looked at her one last time, eyes bright with both terror and pride. "End it, Peanut." The explosion tore through the house, hurling Sarah backward into darkness. She woke hours later in the storm drain, head pounding, rainwater dripping around her. Smoke rose from what had been her home. She could taste metal in her mouth, blood on her tongue. There were no voices now, no sign of her parents, only the faint echo of sirens in the distance. Her trembling hand found the coin-sized device still in her pocket, the fragment intact. She pressed it to her chest and whispered through tears, "I'll finish it. I swear I will." Above her, dawn broke again, the kind of dawn that looks almost gentle until you realize it's shining over ruins. Sarah pushed herself to her feet and started walking toward the horizon, toward Nevada, toward whatever waited next. Each step hurt, each breath felt heavier, but somewhere deep inside, beneath the grief and exhaustion, was a spark her parents had left behind. Not faith, not vengeance, purpose. And as the light spread across the sky, Sarah Chen, once a freshman, now the unwilling architect of peace, kept moving, whispering the only promise she had left. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. How far can a promise carry someone who's lost everything? For Sarah Chen, it carried her into the desert. 3 days after the explosion that took her parents, she crossed the Nevada border under a false name, traveling light, just the clothes on her back and a single coin-sized drive that held the last piece of quantum lock. The media had moved on. The official story called the fire at her family home a gas main accident. But the agencies watching her didn't move on. She could feel them at the edge of every motel parking lot, unmarked cars that idled too long, silhouettes that vanished when she looked twice. And somewhere out there, Colonel Torres was still keeping her alive from a distance. At dawn, a convoy appeared on the empty highway, 3 matte black vehicles cutting through the dust. The lead one slowed beside her. The door opened. "You look like hell," Torres said, stepping out. Sarah managed a thin smile. Good morning to you too. Tors gestured toward the horizon. We don't have much time. Graves is already moving toward the core site, an abandoned data farm outside Tanapa. If he plugs his cloned network into that infrastructure, everything we lost in Chicago comes back online. Sarah touched the pocket where the fragment rested. Then we end it before he gets there. Tors nodded, studying her face. You sure you're ready for this? No, Sarah admitted, but I'm the only one who can do it. They rode in silence across miles of cracked desert. The sun climbed higher, bleaching the world into gold and white. Heat shimmered over the dunes like liquid metal. Tors finally broke the quiet. I read your parents' files again. They weren't traitors. They believed in defense through deterrence. Graves twisted that. Sarah stared out the window. He said he wanted balance. Balance, Tors muttered. That's what tyrants call it when they want your surrender. The vehicles turned off the main road onto a dirt trail that wound toward a cluster of structures half buried in sand. Old satellite dishes leaned like broken bones. Rusted warning signs read, U.S. government property, DECOMMISSIONED facility. But the facility wasn't dead. Faint currents of power hummed beneath the ground, and thin plumes of heat rose from hidden vents. Morrison met them at the gate, sunburned and grim. You were right, Colonel. He's inside already. Brought a small strike team, mercs, not state agents. Any sign of hostages? Tors asked. Morrison shook his head. Just techs. Looks like he's forcing them to keep the systems running. Tors turned to Sarah. Once we get you to the control chamber, you'll insert the fragment into the primary node. That will initiate the final collapse sequence. Sarah swallowed hard. And what happens to everything else? Every remaining key gets wiped. No recovery. And me? Tors didn't answer right away. The system may reactivate its genetic link one last time. We don't know what that will do. Sarah exhaled slowly. So maybe I walk out, maybe I don't. Tors met her gaze. If this ends today, people will live because you existed. That has to count for something. Sarah smiled faintly. Sounds like something my dad would have said. They moved out. The assault on the facility began at twilight. The desert wind kicked up a storm of sand that blurred movement, muffling sound. Morrison's team breached the outer gate, while Sarah and Tors slipped through a maintenance hatch along the northern ridge. Inside, the complex was a labyrinth of steel corridors and humming conduits. The air smelled of ozone and oil. Faded government logos still clung to the walls beneath layers of dust. Tors whispered, "Power readings are off the charts. He's already started the synchronization." They descended a flight of stairs toward the central chamber. Through a cracked doorway, Sarah saw a glow, blue light pulsing like a heartbeat. And at the center, framed by screens and cables, stood Graves. He looked older than she remembered, but not weaker. Calm, methodical, dressed in civilian tactical gear that bore no insignia. When he saw them, he smiled. "You found me. I was beginning to think you'd grown tired of chasing ghosts." Tors leveled her weapon. "Step away from the console, Graves." He ignored her, turning to Sarah. "Did you bring it?" Sarah's pulse quickened. "You mean this?" She held up the small drive. "Ah, the final note in our symphony." Tors took a step forward. "It's over." Graves sighed. "You still don't understand. The system was never about control, it was about continuity. Governments fall. Data survives. I'm preserving humanity's memory before they destroy it themselves." Sarah shook her head. "You're preserving your control over it." Graves smiled sadly. "And you, child, are about to erase the only safeguard left. Do you know what happens when there are no secrets? Chaos, fear, endless war. Your parents built quantum lock to prevent that, and now you'd rather burn it down than let anyone misuse it." Sarah's voice was steady. "Maybe some things shouldn't survive." Tors fired a warning shot that sparked against the steel floor. "Step back." Graves turned slowly, hands raised. You think I'm the villain, but when your leaders start another Cold War without information walls, remember me. He moved suddenly, hand flashing to a detonator clipped to his vest. Tors fired again, catching his shoulder. He staggered, but the device dropped to the floor, blinking. Morrison's voice crackled over comms. Colonel, we've got secondary charges throughout the building. He's rigged the place. Graves laughed through blood. You can't stop evolution. Systems evolve, Colonel, even you. Tors kicked the detonator aside and shouted, Sarah now. Sarah ran to the console. The monitors were alive with code, her code twisting like DNA. The machine seemed to recognize her presence. The patterns shifted, glowing brighter. Insert genetic fragment 2, complete authorization. Her hand shook as she pressed the small device into the slot. A surge of light exploded across the chamber, forcing everyone to shield their eyes. Alarms screamed. Data cascaded across the walls like falling stars. Tors shouted, "What's happening?" Sarah barely heard her. The system was inside her mind again, threads of light pulling memories, emotions, pain. She saw flashes of childhood, her mother's laughter, her father's hands guiding hers over a keyboard the day he told her, "Every lock needs a conscience." Now she understood. She wasn't the key, she was the conscience. The system asked a final question, silent, wordless but clear. Preserve or purge? Sarah looked at Graves, bleeding but still smiling. You can't save them all, he whispered. She closed her eyes and whispered, I don't have to, just the truth. She pressed purge. The world went white. When the light faded, Sarah was lying on the ground, ears ringing. The main core had gone dark. The monitors were dead. Outside, the low rumble of collapsing generators shook the desert. Tors knelt beside her. Sarah, talk to me. Sarah blinked up at the ceiling. Is it done? Morrison's voice came through the static. Confirmed. All systems offline. Global relays disconnected. Graves's uplink destroyed. Tors exhaled, relief and grief in the same breath. You did it. Graves lay nearby, motionless. The detonator's light had died. Sarah sat up slowly. Her body felt like stone. Did anyone else make it? Everyone still breathing, Tors said. You included, barely. Sarah looked toward the horizon through a cracked skylight. Dawn was breaking again, streaks of gold cutting across the desert dust. Seems like it always ends at sunrise, she murmured. Tors followed her gaze. Endings are just quiet beginnings. They stepped outside together as the first light spilled over the dunes. Delta trucks were already rolling in to secure the ruins. Morrison saluted softly. Ma'am, the press will call it a containment incident. No one will know what really happened. Sarah smiled faintly. Good. Maybe the world deserves a day without secrets. Tors turned to her. What about you? We can protect you again. New identity, anywhere you want. Sarah looked at the endless desert stretching toward the horizon. I don't think I want protection anymore, just purpose. Tors nodded. You'll find it. Sarah hesitated. And you? I still have to answer for what happened in Chicago, for the lives we lost. Maybe it's time someone told the truth. They stood there for a moment, soldier and civilian, bound by everything they couldn't explain to anyone else. Then Tors offered her hand. For what it's worth, your parents would be proud. Sarah shook it. Maybe someday I'll believe that. The wind rose again, carrying the scent of sand and burnt circuitry. Sarah closed her eyes, letting it wash over her. For the first time in days, there was no hum of machines, no coded voices in her head, just silence. Not peace, but silence. And sometimes that's enough to start over. She began walking toward the road, the sun climbing behind her. Tors watched her go, then turned back to the smoking ruins. The camera of a future voiceover would fade on Sarah's silhouette against the light, small, determined, human. Because in a world built on secrets, The bravest act wasn't fighting a war. It was choosing to walk away from one. How do you rebuild a life after saving a world that can never know your name? For Sarah Chen, the answer began with silence. 3 months had passed since Nevada. The desert had swallowed its secrets, the blast site sealed under concrete and bureaucratic denial. Government reports called it an energy grid malfunction. The locals just said the earth shook one night and never stopped humming. But Sarah still felt it, the vibration beneath her ribs, the phantom pulse of a system that once lived inside her. She lived now in the outskirts of Portland, under an alias simple enough to forget. She rented a small attic apartment above a bookstore and spent her mornings helping an old man repair clocks. Tick, 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 time reduced to something human again. Some nights when rain tapped the roof like fingers, she'd dream of code instead of numbers. Blue light, voices of her parents whispering through static, her father's laugh, her mother's hands on her shoulders. Then she'd wake to the smell of dust and paper and realize she was still here, still alive, still unfinished. The government had kept its word. She'd been given money, papers, a quiet life. But peace, she was learning, was heavier than war. One morning, a letter arrived with no return address. Inside was a single line, typed on military stationery. Continuity of conscience secured, RT. She smiled faintly, Tours, alive, still watching from somewhere in the shadows. Sarah traced the initials with her thumb, folded the note carefully, and tucked it into her journal. Later that week, she took a bus to the coast. The ocean was gray and endless, the wind sharp enough to taste. She sat on the rocks, staring at the horizon where the water met the sky, and wondered if her parents had planned this, if in their own way they'd known she would end here, halfway between past and possibility. Her phone vibrated, unknown number. She almost ignored it, but instinct won. "You really should answer faster," a familiar voice said. "Tours." In the flesh, well, somewhere near it. Sarah laughed softly. "You always did like dramatic timing." "Old habits, how's civilian life?" "Quiet, I fix clocks." "You, fixing things that actually tick." "Figured I owed the universe that much." There was a pause, the kind that carries both gratitude and goodbye. "Graves's body was never recovered," Tours said finally. "But his network's gone. The world's moving on. No one remembers Nightingale anymore." Sarah watched a wave crash against the rocks. "That's good." "And you?" She hesitated, still remembering. "That's what keeps us honest," Tours said. "For what it's worth, we found a message in one of your father's backup drives. He left it for you." Sarah's breath caught. "Where?" "Check your inbox. It's encrypted, but I think you'll know how to open it." The call ended. The sound of the ocean filled the space where Tor's voice had been. Sarah opened her laptop, tethered to a nearby cafe's weak Wi-Fi, and found a single unread email. Subject line, "For Sarah." Her fingers shook as she entered the decryption, phrase her father had taught her when she was 9. "Every lock needs a heart." The message opened. "Peanut. If you're reading this, it means the system outlived us but didn't own you. That's all we ever wanted. We built walls to protect the world, but you tore them down to remind it what truth feels like. Maybe that's what growing up really is, learning which walls deserve to fall. We loved you more than safety. Never forget that. Dad and Mom." The words blurred as tears welled. For the first time in months, she let herself cry. No battle, no command, no code, just grief and grace. When she finally looked up, the sun was dipping low, turning the ocean silver. She whispered, "I finished it, Dad, it's done." A gull's cry echoed over the water. Somewhere behind her, a child laughed, the sound so ordinary, so clean, it broke her heart a little more. She closed the laptop and sat there until the sky darkened. Weeks passed. The bookstore owner never asked questions, just smiled at the quiet girl who read military history in the back corner and repaired things that were broken. Customers liked her precision, her calm. None guessed that those steady hands had once carried the fate of nations. Sometimes a black SUV would idle across the street for a few minutes, then vanish. Tourist watchers making sure the silence held. Sarah didn't mind. Some ghosts you learn to live beside. One evening, as she locked up the shop, a teenager approached, a nervous boy holding a laptop. "Hey, you fix computers too?" She nodded. "Depends on the damage." He explained that his system had crashed while working on an encryption program for a school project. "It just loops," he said, "like it's trying to talk to itself." Sarah smiled gently. "Show me." The code on his screen was messy, chaotic, but somewhere in the noise she recognized a pattern, familiar, old, a remnant of something her father had written decades ago. She could almost hear his voice. "Every lock needs a conscience." She made a few quick edits, smoothing the logic, adding a safeguard. The loop stabilized. The boy blinked. "How did you?" "Sometimes it just needs a little empathy," she said. "Machines learn that from people." He grinned, thanked her, and ran off into the night. Sarah watched him go, a faint warmth stirring in her chest. Maybe that was the point. Maybe every ending was just an opening someone else would stumble through someday. She walked home beneath streetlights shimmering on wet pavement. The air smelled of rain again. Ordinary, perfect rain. That night, she dreamed of the tunnels one last time. Only now they were empty. No gunfire, no alarms, just echoes. Her mother's laughter bouncing through the corridors like light. Her father waiting by the console, smiling. In the dream, he said, "You fix the clock, Peanut." And she answered, "It finally keeps honest time." When she woke, dawn was spilling through the window. The world looked simple again, coffee steaming, buses starting, life moving. For once, she didn't feel out of place in it. She opened her journal, flipped past the pages filled with fragments of code, sketches of circuit paths, notes she'd written to ghosts. On a fresh page she wrote, "Maybe being human isn't about knowing everything. It's about choosing what deserves to be kept." She closed the journal, exhaled, and let the quiet settle. A month later, a package arrived. No return address, no note. Inside was a small military-grade USB drive and a handwritten label, "For when you're ready to remember." Sarah didn't plug it in, not yet. She placed it on the shelf between two novels and let it gather dust. Some locks, she had learned, didn't need opening to matter. Outside, the city hummed its endless tune. Sarah grabbed her coat and stepped into the street, blending with the morning crowd. Faces moved past, busy, unknowing, alive. She smiled at a stranger just because she could. For the first time since the choppers had landed on her campus months ago, the world didn't feel like something happening to her. It felt like something she could shape, quietly, patiently, one repaired clock at a time. And as she crossed the intersection, the narrator's voice, the one that had followed her through fire and code and loss, faded into something soft, almost a whisper. "Sometimes heroes don't wear uniforms. Sometimes they don't fight wars. Sometimes they just hold the line between truth and silence. Because dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts." The screen would fade to black, the final echo of rotor blades dissolving into the sound of ticking clocks, steady, human, endless.